So we are all like friends. We are all like friends sharing something and with each other. So everybody actually should feel inclined to, to talk and, to throw questions. And in fact, those questions will be answered by anybody. Anybody can pull in with their comments, on those. So it's meant to be more like a very participative dialogue. Very participative dialogue. That's the intention. And luckily, as we were preparing for this informal dialogue program, so we had some very nice things to share. So there is a lady called Nandini Patnaik, whom many of you know. She lives now in Los Angeles. And she shared two very good pieces of text, actually, which I have, shared with you on email and also on WhatsApp. They're actually really very, very good because I found that while reading them, some of you may not have had the time to read them because it's only yesterday I sent it. But whenever you have the time, I think they contain a lot of the essence of what, we always want to discuss, talk about. So it's very interesting. And also, there is something that, which I shared maybe 3 or 4 days earlier, where, Krishnaji talks about the need to make the understanding one's own, actually, so that there is no need to resort to a quote, like quoting X, quoting Y. So whatever one has internalized, whatever there is. And so he said that is the way when dialogue really becomes very special, when everybody is trying to understand and make the whatever issue is to make it one's own, actually. So that's the broad background. That was very helpful to come across these texts and quotation from Krishnaji's just a couple of days ago. And as you know, we have put we put in the theme just to start the ball rolling. I think the theme, and as you know, when we are talking about issues related to life, what we call spirituality or whatever, any theme is good enough to start the ball rolling because they all converge, they all come together. So the theme, if you recall, I had put the theme are the self, the ego, the self, fear, and thought. I thought, are they all one and the same thing? So that's the question I thought, I thought we would pose as the start point of the theme, But remembering that that's not supposed to close the issue and bring it to a very narrow range of discussion, it's supposed to expand to whichever area you feel like. So that's the broad introduction. Most of us, know each other, but some may not. Some are new, but maybe a time will come during the program when you can introduce yourself when you want to comment on something. So with that brief introduction, and remembering that this is a very informal program, it's a very informal program that we are all. My wife was asking me today, who is the speaker? I said today we are all the speakers. So we are all supposed to be participating, and quite openly, because sometimes many of these dialogues they end up with a lot of understanding later on. May not be immediate, may not happen at the dialogue, but it does somehow happen later. So with those few words, I thought I just opened the dialogue for discussion, comments, initial comments. Anybody wants to share any initial comments, either on the theme or things related to the theme, anything. I just started to set the ball rolling, so to speak.
So, I'd like to ask that what can be the utility of these dialogues actually? It's a basic thing, like what there is need of these dialogues. If one can go reading volumes after volumes and books after books, videos, what is the need of these dialogues?
Maybe Anshu, I could just start and then we can all share that, because I was listening to something that was going on with, I think, Krishnaji and some others in the room about dialogue. I think when everybody is in the dialogue with an open mind, Anshu, I feel that if everybody is, this is my thought, my view, if everybody is there with an open mind, without any sort of, what that word is often used, conditioning. Then, there is an issue of trying to understand something, and everybody is trying to understand something. So it's a matter of everybody dropping all their own views, opinions. Then, of course, I think dialogue can become very useful. But if it is everybody is in the dialogue with very fixed opinions and fixed, with a fixed mindset, then I think a dialogue can become just an issue with time passes and the dialogue ends, and then everybody is gone without any real understanding. So that's my thought, Anshu. Maybe anybody else could chip in. Sanjay wants to say. Sanjay, yeah. Sanjay, mute कर लीजिए. You are on mute.
What I feel, if there is love or if there is compassion, then definitely dialogue will happen. Because dialogue is not about just influencing you with my ideas, with my understanding and all that. Dialogue is required to know each other, to know ourselves also, because then you are not fixed with any particular idea. There must be love, and love will automatically take us to the dialogue.
I remember, just to share one small episode, when, I used to work in Varanasi for 2 years. I worked there, Krishnamurti Foundation India, Varanasi. And I was actually near the study center on the banks of the Ganges. And a young man had come to the center. He was very young. So I was sitting there on the banks, and he came along and sat down. And he said that, "Sir, can I share something with you?" So he asked me, I'm very confused about one thing. He said that, the scriptures and all, they talk about war and, having the courage to fight and all these sort of things, like they sort of glorify the soldier, so to speak, the Yodha. They glorify the Yodha. And Krishnaji says that, war is absolutely so, how does one react to this sort of a situation? So it was very interesting. It started like that. And it went for about half an hour, 45 minutes. And even I found it very perplexing, because, very often we wonder how does one approach an issue like that, and it's a very valid point he had. So, at the end, I don't know whether we were able to reach something conclusive or not conclusive, but it did help to clarify a few things in my mind, perhaps in his mind also, because he's right, very often the scriptures do talk about sort of glorifying the image of the soldier or and then Krishnaji talks, almost as though, if you are in any sort of violence, you can't be doing a job which requires violence. So there seemed to be a conflict. So it was very interesting, and I don't say that we were able to conclude one way or the other, but it was certainly helpful in seeing a sort of a more conclusive, conclusive picture of the whole thing. So maybe, and so that's one of the ways in which I found it very helpful. Even in a very simple example, a very spontaneous dialogue happened. Very spontaneous dialogue. Morning, Chaitanya. Morning.
Good morning.
Morning,
I'm
Chaitanya.
sorry. Yeah, good morning, Kamalji. I'm so sorry. I took 15 minutes to join.
No problem.
I'm having some problem. You see, I can still not switch on my video.
Okay.
And
Okay.
there is something wrong with my laptop or with connectivity. But I can see all of you. I am so happy that after a long time I'm able to see you. So a very good morning to all of you. And that's all. Thank you.
So Chaitanya, we started, talking about something that, Anshu is a young student from Patna. So he's just completed class 12 in Patna.
Okay.
So he had one question. He was saying that, a question for everybody, I think, because here, as we said, we are all speakers. He had a question, what is the use of a dialogue, really? I mean, what's the point? If we are going to keep talking about something and endlessly, is there any utility of a dialogue? So that's where we were just talking about it. And so any inputs, anything you want to share, Chaitanya, anybody else?
I think, Kamalji, there's one thing that I think we all need to understand is there's a need to look at the very word dialogue. And I think many of us are aware of it. It's about the origin of the word. It actually doesn't mean a conversation between two people, as many of us think. It comes from dia and logos, which means a conversation through words. Doesn't have to be between two people. It's a Greek word, logos is word. So it means a conversation between two or more people. Actually, David Bohm went very deeply into it. So he said that it is not just words that we use in a dialogue. It is the meaning of the words that we share among participants. Like what I say, when I use the word say in a Krishnamurti dialogue, I use the word say, self. It has to have the same meaning as other participants have about the word self, with respect to the word self. So that meaning has to be established among all participants, because I may be using the word self in Krishnamurti's parlance in a different sense altogether, which is very different from the sense in which the traditional religion uses the word self. Now, first of all, in a dialogue, in a Krishnamurti dialogue, it's a dialogue, conversation through words, not just words, but the meaning of words has to flow very freely among the participants. Now, David Bohm was very clear about it. Till they come to a general understanding, not to an answer, but to a general understanding. There is a conversation, they talk, they express their views freely, and there has to be a general understanding. And it's a very different thing qualitatively from a discussion or a debate, because there is no authority. We are all exploring together, thinking together. I think that's what I understand by the word dialogue. Right? Not just exchanging words, they can be very empty, verbal dialogues, having in which we display our knowledge, verbal knowledge, and so on. We ourselves, the person initiating the dialogue, has to maybe start afresh and again look at the words that he has been or she has been using in all the previous dialogues, so that he can take all the participants together.
Right.
Right? It's a process of thinking together.
Yeah. Anshu, does that help, Anshu? Anything else you want to feed it?
That was very helpful, actually.
Because
Hello?
You said something, it was not audible.
No.
Anshu, he said, Chaitanya, he said that was very helpful.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you, Anshu.
So I'm just wondering here, does the answer end the question? Does it sound like a relevant point, or like, I don't know. I mean, I just struck my mind.
You
just
said
thinking
yes,
out loud
yes,
here.
yes?
Yeah, this is.
Yes, that's right. Okay, yes.
Gosh.
Good point. Yeah, good point. No, so I think, again, I'm just a brief comment, and then we must, get everybody else to think about it, is that the issue is, I think, when, if I recall that example which I mentioned about, sitting on the banks of that river at Rajghat, in Varanasi, and that young man raising a very valid question, actually. He said that, how is it that, the scriptures eulogize, the Yodha, so to speak, and you're supposed to be a hero if you go to war and die in a war, actually. And Krishnaji himself says that, how can you be actually ever thinking? You start from the very fundamentals. How can a profession which invites violence, how can you glorify violence? So I think, what happened was, I remember now a little bit of how that dialogue went. And, so the thing was, he he could actually see where Krishnaji was coming from. Where Krishnaji was coming from, where unless your whole understanding of the thing in totality, it's not a fragmented understanding, but unless it's a totality, an understanding in totality, it's very difficult to respond to. So that's the idea that I got. So in a nutshell, I suppose there was no answer emerging from that dialogue, but one could feel a certain a sense of where perhaps a so-called traditional view comes from and where Krishnaji is coming from. And maybe the answer lies in that understanding. Maybe that's just
the conclusion of a dialogue. It seeks awareness more than looking for an answer.
Awareness more than an answer. That's what Abhishek is saying.
Somebody wants to ask a question. Somebody is raising his hand. A gentleman on the left side of my screen.
Somebody is asking a question.
Yeah. Somebody is raising his hand on the left side of my screen.
Pavitra, you want to say something, Pavitra?
His name is in a language which is not.
It's Yuga?
It's me.
Yeah.
Oh, it's you. It's Yuga. Okay, Yuga. Carry on, Yuga. Carry on.
No, I think it's important to be precise with the words. In fact, as you all know, like Krishnamurti also start any dialogue like, are we talking about the same thing? And he always go to the root of the word. And so to see the fact together, first we need to start rightly, right? So I think the gentleman who said about like we need to know what we are referring if we are talking about the same thing, that's a good way to start. Like when we say self or fear, exactly what we mean by self-centeredness, ego, and all those things. And I also want to raise a question for all of you and me, myself. I remember in one conversation, Krishnamurti said that he could have lived like 300 years if he didn't travel so much. And that would happen because he could mutate the brain cells. So my question is it possible? Well, first of all, how does it happen? And is this self-centeredness, fear, and ego, does it have a really big impact in this, how to say, the brain cells? They get old. For example, when I talk to my grandfather, I really I see that he's not such a fresh as when he was younger. So if you have grandparents, or I guess you usually meet like elder people, and I see that nobody's like Krishnamurti. I mean, like if you see Krishnamurti's talks, even in his last talk, you can see him afresh. So you really can feel that what he was saying about this mutation is real, right? So does this fear, ego really impact in this degradation of the brain cells, make them like old, and then we lose all our vitality, right? I work with kids and I see this this freshness every day, but the more you grow older, the more this is it disappears. So what do you think about this? Thank you.
Yeah, if I may be allowed to take that question, Kamalji.
Yes.
Or if somebody else wants to respond, it's okay. I mean, it's just interesting because I read that statement and I was also intrigued by what he said. Actually, sir, I don't know your name. May I know your name, sir?
Sorry, it's written in Japanese. My name is Hyuga Amir. You can call me Hyuga if you want, or Amir.
You see, there is a belief in religious traditions, especially in India, that a person, when he becomes liberated, when he attains spiritual salvation, which means no more desires, The body is an expression of unfulfilled desire, right? I'm talking about the traditional approach, right? So when the desire is has come to an end, there's an extinction, there's a state of nirvana, then there is no purpose for the body to carry on. That's the traditional way, that's the traditional belief. Krishnaji responded to this. He said that I don't agree with this idea that once a person becomes enlightened, he doesn't survive beyond 72 hours. He just passes away because there is no reason for him to survive. Krishnaji did believe that he had a mission, that he has to talk to people as a world teacher. When he had cancer, a stage came where the doctor said he would not be able to talk anymore. And he did say that if I am not able to talk, then the body would come to an end. Right. About this question of a liberated person not able to survive beyond 72 hours after he attains salvation, Krishnaji said, no, I don't agree. If that person lives in an unpolluted atmosphere, lives rightly, eats the right kind of food, does the right kind of exercise, he may even live beyond 100 years or even more. I don't know whether he ever mentioned 300 years. He also said that I could have lived, maybe the body could have lived more if it had not traveled so much, because maybe he was pointing to the fact that each time he has to travel, he has to pass through the scanner. Maybe he was exposed to some kind of radiation and so on. Yeah. I don't know what he was trying to point to, but I think this is to me, it's not very relevant. Of course, this is of academic importance, but Krishnaji lived a full life, 90 years, spoke for 60 years, addressed audiences across the world. I don't know, people could have understood him if he had lived for another 50 years. What people could understand, they did. What they could not understand, they could not. I think it has nothing to do with the quantity of life. He did live a very good life. He did what he had to do as a teacher, teaching day in, day out in his private conversations, public meetings. So that's my response. And another question that was asked was, there is no need to search for an answer in dialogue. I think this is something about which Krishnaji spoke very beautifully. He gave the analogy of a tennis match, in which the ball remains hanging in the air and the questioner ceases to exist. There is neither the questioner nor the answerer. In a dialogue, all that remains in the end fact is a question. And that's all. I mean, we don't know the answer. We don't know the question. What you said, I just shared what Krishna said.
If I may, is it okay if I interject?
Please do.
Yeah. So
you introduce yourself also, yes, because everybody may not have met you. Chaitanya is from Allahabad, so you can just introduce yourself, just so we get to know each other also as we talk.
Yeah, but actually,
yes.
Given that we are talking about self in a very different light today, I think all of that comes to me when you're talking about self. So I can't really introduce myself very easily. So is it okay if I skip that?
Carry on. Whatever is comfortable, yes. Whatever is comfortable, carry on.
Yeah. So Chaitanya ji came to a pretty interesting point where this question as a ball is hanging in the air, and we've already had Anshu started with a question, and I found it fairly interesting and deep, and not connected to anything. It seemed to have its own genesis. Of course, we are there in the dialogue, but so the point that Chaitanya ji is talking about, is is it there? Is it here? Is it there in our dialogue? Like we've had a question.
Yes, since you are addressing me directly, or it seems that you are addressing my question directly, referring to something, but I don't think we were discussing self at all. We did mention something about the so-called salvation, liberation of the limited from the limited self. We did talk about the meaning of the dialogue and whether it is actually a quest for an answer or it is just an art of staying with the question, regardless of where it comes from, whether it's a superficial question or a fundamental question. It is to find the profound in the trivial and to see the trivial in the profound. I think that's what we do in a dialogue. The question of self that you are referring to, it hasn't come up at all as far as I think, but it's not that it's something forbidden. We can take it up. I don't know whether we are sticking to the few questions that Kamalji proposed before we started this a few days back when he proposed this dialogue, but we can take that up also, that the self, according to Krishna ji, what it exactly means, whether there is any possibility of dissolution of that self, whether it is at all
So Chaitanya
possible.
ji,
Yeah.
instead of bringing that, there is this self which has already come up in our dialogue in a different way, in that request for an introduction, right?
Yeah.
So that contains the self as we all naturally understand it. You are something, I am something, and you were talking about whether I'm addressing you or not. So are we addressing each other, and who are we addressing?
Excuse I just wanted to say about the mutation in the brain cells. Seems like Krishnamurti also said, like if you don't carry out this mutation, then it's difficult to see the things as they are. That's why I was trying to relate, or I was relating the fear, ego, and self-centeredness to this mutation, because if the mutation doesn't take place, then we will keep all the time seeing things from memory, from the past, or from everything we have accumulated. And about the 300 years story, I think is in Krishnamurti's nephew's book. I think the name is Narayan. I'm not very good at Indian language, so names, but I think it was in his book, and somewhere else he talked about this. Thank you.
But also, yes, Yuga, the point you made is very interesting because it's not directly related to the point, but I think it just does seem to me that I think what Krishnaji was probably trying to say is that as long as there is a lot of stuff in the memory or, in our conditioning, it can never allow the brain to function to its full potential. So in a sense, I think what he was trying to say, and that's just my thought, it may not be correct, was that the full health of the brain and its ability to work to full potential depends on how capable it is of being with what is. So, I mean, a point must come, and this is again just a thought, a point must come where it is incapable of seeing anything but what is. So I'm not so sure whether I'm able to express what I'm saying, but I thought there was a very valid point about the health of the individual, dependent on the way the person has lived his life, all the things that he has recorded here in the brain, consciously or unconsciously. So they have all, become part of that. There was something very interesting that, Michael Mendiza, I think some of you, Abhishek was probably there, some of us were there in that program.
Yeah.
Where he referred to a very interesting statement. He said, conditioning is karma. And that was a very interesting statement because what he seemed to imply is that whatever has been recorded consciously or unconsciously, becomes our conditioning, which is in the, and that effectively becomes our karma also, unless there is mutation, basically, as you rightly said. Unless there is a real change, it's just going to keep repeating itself, that's the thought I wanted to share, Yuga. Just
so,
yeah.
So seeing things fresh all the time is involved in this mutation of the cells. I think it's really interesting because Krishnamurti, when he deals with these scientists, like David Bohm, he always was talking about this mutation. For me, it was kind of interesting because many philosophers or these kind of people, they always talk in some terms, that you cannot really get to the point. When he talks with these scientists, he really is very specific, and let's go deeper and deeper, and let's see what it means, this mutation in the brain cells. For me, it has been something like very interesting in all his dialogue with these people. So I thought it was, yes, interesting to share this.
Also, yes, I think just in the text that we have, that I've sent for reading, one of them was of the Bombay talks in 1955. That was the Bombay talk in 1955, where I think one of the most beautiful things, that one constant, it is so simply said, is that can you really ever listen until you abandon all your opinions, all your fixed views? Because we always listen through a filter. So I think that's so interesting, because probably relevant to even Anshu's point about dialogue, is that a dialogue is it really possible unless everybody has actually got this ability to listen without anchorage? He used that very nice word called anchorage, which anchorage meaning that, I'm rooted in some opinions of the worldview. I'm rooted in those opinions, and it is through that which I engage in dialogue. So I thought I'd share that also.
Yeah, I think that when there is this art of listening, then all together we can see the same thing without any screen, right? So I think it's really important, yes, this art of listening. And without this art of listening, we are not really communicating. We are just trying to express things through words, but we are not together. I think he also used to say together, right?
Yeah. So if I may just respond to this the abandonment that we are talking about, abandoning the anchorage, abandoning our worldview, our opinions, and all of that, which I don't know even if we fathom the full depth of it. I don't know. It seems very deep. But the question I'd like to ask is that, is this abandonment, is this what sort of abandonment is this? Is it in time? Is it I don't know, maybe maybe this is not the right way to put it, because no, is it let's say, is it an abandonment that we must wait for? Is it an abandonment that we need to find a path to? Is it an abandonment that needs to happen somehow? Or what sort of abandonment are we talking about here?
Yes, just to again, just to feed into the discussion, maybe others should join. Is that if again, in the text that I was reading that text and I was mentioning, when he was going as as fundamental an issue, which people find it so difficult to see, and which is the fact that we cannot think without the anchorage of being, say, a Hindu or a Christian or this or that. That's a simple anchorage like that, which is actually something we are consciously holding on to, actually. We don't want to get to the point where we start as human beings, as complete human beings. So, I mean, So it's not that, again, it's not something that's related to a complex issue like time and all that. It's probably an unwillingness to look at things as they are. We always want to feel secure in wherever we are. There is a certain security in our worldview. So I suppose, he was saying that, how can we ever solve, this was the other discussion that was going on with David Bohm and some others in that, which I circulated, where he's saying that how can you ever find a solution to any problem, any global problem, unless there is an ability to look at yourself without any division whatsoever. And it sounds very complex, but actually it just demands honesty and integrity, I suppose. So
yes. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, Yoga, carry on, Yoga.
No, I just wanted to say that completely, like, if you have a mind full of problems, you cannot solve a problem. And that's another one of his main lines he usually says. So as the other gentleman was saying, right, like you need to leave the question to unfold itself, not to look for an answer. So with this can we say it, like more simple way of seeing the things, seeing the things as they are, then maybe the question will unfold itself. And that's it. It's like the tennis ball he was mentioning, right? It's in the air. There is no forward, backward. I mean, it's a ball moving, and you just observe it, and you can see the fact that the ball is moving, but there are not sides, right?
Hmm. So everybody else is very quiet today.
My microphone.
Yeah.
You have muted me, Kamal bhai.
You unmute yourself, Chaitanya. Unmute.
I have actually. What is troubling me a little is that I have noticed that only 4 of us are talking.
Yes.
And since we have been attending dialogue for more than 2.5 decades now, at various places, I have often noticed that those who speak less have very profound and much deeper insights to share than those who are voluble like a stream. So I would request them to speak too. And there's one thing I want to say. Have we ever really looked? There's a very nice saying in Zen Buddhism that a teacher is asked, what do we do if we meet the Buddha? The teacher says, just kill him. Now, can we do it? Not talk about Krishnaji. Have we ever actually felt that because of my memory, because of this constant pressure that memory exerts on me, am I able to talk to Kamalji without the interference of memory? Have I really suffered the pangs of this? Have I really suffered because I feel that I'm not able to love because of this self? Have we ever actually had a first-hand perception, experience the pain of it? Or we are just saying something that, of course, what Krishnaji says has value, but are we not, can we just use it as a pointer which somebody has used? We don't know about Krishnamurti. Somebody has said this. Maybe a passerby, a beggar on the street, or a child even. Can we really meet Krishnamurti? When we meet, can we actually kill him and start afresh? Do we really know what it means to start afresh? Which means not using any of those words, like mutation of the mind is something I don't even know about. How can I start with mutation of the mind? I can only see abnegation, abandonment of the self. Do I actually see in those various gross and subtle ways in which self is poking its nose all the time? Unless I have seen that from moment to moment, where does the question of abandonment, of negation of that self come from? Where does this
See,
nutrition of the brain come from? If I have not even seen for myself the need for mutation.
I would like to say something.
Yes, yes. Abhishek, is it Abhishek? Who is it?
See, Krishnamurti has never claimed that I am the enlightenment. He has just said, I'm someone who is just like a medium, and he has never said whatever I'm saying is the fact. He just said it. And when you mentioned that, when you see the Buddha and you kill him, I think that has a different interpretation to it. And it is not actually killing the Buddha, because be it Buddha, be it Krishnamurti, and they never really claim that what I'm saying is the truth, ultimate truth, but it was left for speculation. So I do not think they were ever claimed. Yeah, of course, whatever you're saying is true.
I find the idea of speculation quite interesting, because like having been left for speculation, so so are we often speculating? Are we often speculating?
Like today's talk was on fear and thought.
So, Anshu, I think 2 points. I think the points that Chaitanya mentioned, that Yash mentioned, that Abhishek mentioned, and also what Anshu mentioned. I think, in a sense, I mean, again, this is just something that I'm putting into the discussion. I am wondering whether it is not really an issue of whether, we should be listening to X or Y or Z. Actually. The issue is, if we listen to what that person has said, the person, do we make that what we have listened either our own or we reject it, basically? Either of the two. The problem is that our focus always goes on the person who has said something, never on what is being said. And if I just want to add another dimension to it also, again for discussion, is that is living the teaching really possible? Any teaching, mind you, whether it is Buddha's teaching or Krishna's teaching, is it really possible if we have not really gone into it and made it our own, actually? Is it really possible? Because the reason I mention this is it's really then it goes into a stage which is beyond words, actually. So once there is a quality of seeing, a quality of understanding, isn't it so that the person who is involved, whether it's Krishnaji or Buddha or whoever it may be, that person becomes fairly irrelevant? And I suppose you then begin to live the teachings, not because you want to live the teachings, but then you have lost the ability to be untrue to whatever you have now seen, for sure, actually. So this is just, I don't know whether I made it very complicated in the way I explained it or the way I put it, but this is just a thought, actually, whether living the teaching is really impossible without making that teaching something that you're not querying and questioning all your life, actually. I think if all your life we are actually,
Sumanji, I think when the Zen quote, like when you meet the Buddha, kill him, I feel like it was killing the conditioning of mind, that because they would think that this is the truth, this is not the truth. So whenever they see something, it didn't, like Buddha would never came up and claim this is the ultimate truth. So that is the time you should tell yourself, no, this is just my conditioning saying it.
Sorry, I think Anshu wanted to say something. He started, but somehow there was some interruption and it stopped. I don't see him now.
He's on the screen. Maybe he's got a connection issue.
He just started, he spoke a couple of sentences and then he stopped. So I was just searching. Okay.
Arijit sir wants to say, he's raising his hand.
Yes. Arijit da, bolun, Arijit da.
I am very new to Krishnamurti Foundation. I am Arijit Bakchi, and So I have definitely a few questions, but my question is, before I say something, my views are on what speakers have said. Was Krishnamurti leaning towards Advaita Vedanta? He has said a lot of pointings. He has given a lot of pointings, and I have got with me a lot of pointings. Of course, long time back, I had purchased a book also on Krishnamurti JK, and I want to know whether he was his pointings to me, being myself studying Advaita Vedanta, points towards Advaita Vedanta, points towards truth, which is the goal of today's dialogue also, I feel. Am I speaking correctly? Because just now, Mr. Thakkar, the head of this book, he said that we have to go beyond words, we have to live the experience. These are all pointers given in already Upanishads. These are pointers also given by Mr. Krishnamurti. So can you tell me whether they have similarities, and if so, how much similarity is there between both? Thank you.
So Arinda, I can just share something that that there was a very old lady, very known to our center. She used to live in Salt Lake, actually. So one of our idols in a way. She was 93 years old, I think 94 years old when she passed away, and her name was Amala Chakravarti, actually. And she used to say that she used to be very involved with the scriptures and reading Gita, this and that, Vedanta and everything. And then she said, later when she started coming to the center, she said that ironically, when I started listening to the simplicity of how Krishnaji was talking about certain things, it helped me to understand the scriptures, because I realized that I was reading the scriptures rather mechanically. That is what she said. So I have a feeling to an extent, is that it comes back to the issue that I think Yuga was mentioning earlier, actually. We always try to look at, whether he was saying something similar to what Buddha was saying, or whether it's similar to Vedanta. But we still cannot, go beyond the ground rules of what he's saying, which we were mentioning, is we cannot go beyond the anchorage which we have created for ourselves as the self, so to speak. So in other words, I think if he said that, can you see yourself only as a human being? It starts from there, starts from something very close, So my feeling, Arindita, is that sometimes, because of the fact that we are looking for, conceptual understanding, it's probably becomes a bar for real understanding. So then, as I was suggesting, then I think the person, or becomes somewhat irrelevant, because to some extent, you then connect with something which really has no, you can't define it. You cannot call that, you cannot define that seeing. This is what I meant by going beyond words, so to speak.
No, I fully agree with what you're saying. But only point I am trying to understand is when you say that we are a human being. Actually, I do not know whether Krishnamurti has said that we are a human being, but many pointers are given to him where he says that we are not human beings. See, he says that to know the truth, we have to be nothing. Somewhere he has said, okay, and then to forget everything that one knows. It is one of the most difficult things to be free, to forget everything that one knows inwardly of yesterday, to die to every experience. One has to be pleasurable and painful, but only then is the mind free to live, to act totally, which you was just saying, that we have to go beyond words, beyond the mind. So I don't think, JK, please correct me if I'm wrong, I know he did not point out anywhere about Upanishads, He has rather said in one writing which have circulated to go beyond Vedas and this and that. But Vedas and also says that Vedas is not required to find out the truth, because the truth, what we are, is that we are not the ego, we are the self. And by self, it means that we are basically consciousness. We are not this body and mind which we are here talking with each other. This is a passing phase, is a passing show, whereas our ultimate truth is self, that self which is consciousness, which is the eternal truth. Like, there is one saying, asato ma satgamayo, tamaso ma jyotirgamayo, mrityor ma amritang maya. I think you know this thing. Take us from truth, untruth to truth. Take us from darkness to light. Take us from death to immortality. Because self, our consciousness, our chaitanya, our atma, our brahman is eternal. It is not darkness. It is light, always self-luminous. Whereas our mind, ego, is temporary. It has come and go, and our body is also temporary. So, what I find is why I'm saying all these things is I find these type of pointers in his saying, and in fact, many of these people who spoke here also were pointing to these things. When somebody said that beyond words, it becomes irrelevant, means yes, concepts become irrelevant, our thoughts becomes irrelevant, our prejudices, our conditioning becomes irrelevant when we are in our state of consciousness. That is true, very true, and we never see it, everything is with a right perspective. We see without filtered eyes, like conditioning and all that, which already it has been circulated, which I fully agree. And one more point, that fear, whether it is damages the brain cell, yes, fear and all this thinking of and all this our senses and feelings and all these, they damage the brain cells and causes Alzheimer. And that is the reason why we should always meditate. Meditation means to like Buddha, I'm talking about vipassana, if you have done, anybody has done, to observe, and JK has said many places we have to observe and that is called, he says, this understanding from the deeper sense, from the deepest sense, because ultimately everything is sameness. There is a sameness in everything. Like, there is an ocean, but there is a lot of waves in the ocean, and we say, oh, big wave, small wave, but after all, it is all water. The wave is a name and form, and name and form has to dissolve in water only. So this world is also full of names and forms in the ocean of consciousness, and it is that consciousness we have to abide in. Means, that is the goal of life, and I think that is what Krishnamurti also, JK also wants to say. I'm not sure, but that is what I get the feeling. That's all I wanted to share. So I would like to know whether anybody is in this type of pursuit in their life.
Chaitanya, want to say something?
Yeah, I actually, Kamalji, whenever I have heard this, it is like, with all respect, very respectfully and humbly, I would like to tell you, Arijita, we have never met before, that it's like saying that what you are saying just now, Kamalji has already said this in the past, or yes, just mentioned it. What does it do to you? I think it's like an insult to you. I mean, the man who spoke for 60 years and said, don't compare what I'm saying with what others have said. Don't compare. I have not read the Gita. Don't bring in the Buddha. I am not Christ. He was asked directly by Mary Latins, if you are Christ, he said, no. I am Christ, but in a very unconventional sense. The Zen Buddhist said he is like a Zen master. The Tibetan Buddhist said that in Kala Chakratantra, it is mentioned that somebody called Krishnaji would be born 400 years later, and this man will be born in India, will be known as Krishnamurti. All this kind of thing. I am saying, when you talk, I say, oh, I have already heard this. This was said by my father 60 years back. Now, what does it do to you? It's a humiliation, sir. This man is saying something which he says, please listen, regardless of whether somebody else said or not, regardless of whether you agree with what I'm saying, but please don't compare, because there is violence in comparison. He had a talk with Swami Venkateshanand. He had a talk with Walpola Rahula, a Buddhist scholar from Sri Lanka. And they repeatedly told him that, sir, what you are saying has already been said by the Buddha. The Mahavakyas of the Upanishads have already said it. He said, sir, please, I have not read them. Why are you telling me that what I am saying is already written? Is it because we are too arrogant of the knowledge that we have accumulated for 3,000, 4,000 years? And if it was written 3,000 years back, what has that knowledge done to us? Why is Krishnamurti saying that you are still in a mess? You lead a shoddy life in spite of, I mean, we are showing our own, I think, intellectual bankruptcy when we say that we have been reading it for 3,000 years, sir. So what do we mean? We don't need you. We have been reading it, and what has all that knowledge done to us? Are we not still divided? Are we still not caught up in issues that Krishnamurti harped on for 70 years? So what means? So therefore, he's saying that no, it's not the same thing. If you had read it, you would not be in the same predicament that you are in today. So he's saying something fresh. Right? Maybe you felt hungry yesterday. You feel hungry again today. It's a different hunger. You need food again. So what I'm trying to point out, sir, is that it hardly matters whether it was ever said, especially when the man continues to emphasize on fresh looking, on fresh listening. Listening without memories. Why do we insist that my forefathers have already said it, sir? What do we mean to say? Are we asking him not to repeat, just back off and go away? Or we are just listening because we are interested in some comparative religion, a study of comparative religions, a study of what the Buddha said and what Krishnamurti said. I mean, what do we mean when I said, Arijita, sir, that what you said has already been said by Kamalda or Yash or Gautam? What do I mean? Am I listening to you at that moment? I'm listening to Gautam. What Gautam said yesterday, I'm listening to that. I'm not listening to you. And that is precisely what he's saying. He says, listen, sir. Listening is the only thing that can liberate you. If you go towards the end of the book called Ending of Time, and when David Bohm is totally frustrated, throwing up his hands in exasperation and saying, sir, what is going to change us? You dismiss everything. You say, reject everything. Then is there anything left that is going to change us? He said, can you only listen, sir? Can you just listen to a person who is liberated? He didn't say listen to me. I am saying, by saying that what Krishnaji has said has already been said by thousands of people, maybe they said the same thing. But what value has it? Why are we saying it? I personally feel that if I told Krishnaji the same thing, I would be humiliating. That's all, sir. Thank you. Because this is an issue that has always made me feel very excited and very, I become very reactive when I listen to this, because I've been telling this in so many retreats and meetings, invariably somebody asks this question, that even pathlessness is a path. Come on, he's saying truth is a pathless land. Why are you turning this also? It's like saying that even baldness is a hairstyle. I am bald. You say it's a hairstyle. Come on, sir. How can it be a hairstyle? So I am saying that it is not the same thing. And even if it were the same thing, is it possible to still listen to him? That's the challenge. I have been listening to my wife for 25 years. And she says the same thing today that she said yesterday and the day before yesterday. But can I still listen to her? That's a challenge that is throwing at us, at the human consciousness, that are you still capable of listening in spite of the fact that your brain is filled with all the memories, all the knowledge? Can you set it aside just for a second and listen? That 1 second will be a moment of liberation for you. Thanks, sir.
Yeah, Pavitra wants to say a few something. Pavitra?
হ্যাঁ, আমি একটু বাংলাতেই বলছি। হ্যাঁ,
বলুন, আপনি বাংলায় বলুন, আমরা সবাই বুঝতে পারি।
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ, তো মানে আমি যেটা বলছি যে ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ হ্যাজ ইটস ওন লিমিটেশন। মানে আমি একটা কিছু বক্তব্য পেশ করব, এর কিছু লিমিটেশন আছে। কারণ শব্দ মানে ওয়ার্ডস আমি অ্যাকচুয়ালি যেটা মিন করতে চাইছি সেটা হয়তো নাও ক্যারি করতে পারে। এখন আমি মানে স্যার এতক্ষণ ধরে মানে একটা লেখা পাঠিয়েছিলেন, তাতে অনেকগুলো পয়েন্ট আউট করা আছে। একটা তো ক্রিয়েটিভিটির ওপর কিছু কথা ছিল, আর লিসনিং এর ওপর স্যার বলছিলেন। তো আমি এটা বলতে চাইছি যে হোয়াই কান্ট উই লিসেন। আমি যখন আমি নিজেকে দেখি যে আমি শুনতে পারছি না কেন, মানে এখন ধরুন এত বক্তব্য সবাই রাখছে, আমি যখন নিজের দিকে তাকাই দেখি আমি সঠিকভাবে শুনতে পারছি না। আমি শুনতে পাচ্ছি না কেন, এটা আমার কাছে একটা কোশ্চেন। আমি যখন নিজেকে পুট করি কোশ্চেনটার মধ্যে, তখন দেখি এর মধ্যে 4টে জিনিস কাজ করছে। একজন লিখছে কান্ট আন্ডারস্ট্যান্ড, মানে বাংলাতেই বলছে।
আমি ট্রান্সলেট করে দেবো পরে, নো প্রবলেম।
ঠিক আছে, ঠিক আছে।
ট্রান্সলেট দিস ফর ইউ।
হোয়াই কান্ট উই লিসেন, আমরা শুনতে পারি না কেন? আমি এটা উত্তরটা বাংলায় বলছি যে আমি দেখছি এক তো প্রথম হচ্ছে নলেজ। আমার কাছে কিছু নলেজ আছে, আমি কৃষ্ণমূর্তি পড়ছি অনেক দিন ধরে, কৃষ্ণমূর্তি সম্বন্ধে আমার একটা ভার্বাল নলেজ তৈরি হয়েছে। হ্যাঁ, কান্ট স্যার একটা লেখা পাঠিয়েছিলেন, তাইতে যে কে লিখছেন যে কান্ট ইউ লিসেন উইদাউট ইন্টারপ্রিটেশন। যখন আমরা একে অপরকে শুনি আমরা ইন্টারপ্রিট করার চেষ্টা করি। আমি যখন গৌতম দা কিছু বলছে বা কমল স্যার কিছু বলছেন, আমি দেখছি যে আমি ইন্টারপ্রিট করার চেষ্টা করছি। আমার কাছে সাইলেন্সটা অনেক বেশি ইম্পর্টেন্ট নয়, শুধু লিসনিংটা, অ্যাক্ট অফ লিসনিংটা শুধু ইম্পর্টেন্ট নয়। আমি দেখছি যে আমার মধ্যে এমন একটা প্রবণতা, একটা ইনক্লিনেশন আছে যে আমার ওই নলেজটাকে সাপোর্ট করছে কিনা, আমার মধ্যে যে অলরেডি স্টাবলিশড আইডিয়াস গুলো আছে সেগুলোকে সাপোর্ট করছে কিনা দেখতে চাইছি। রাদার ইটসেলফ পিওর মাইন্ড এনার্জি স্টেট, সেটা এতটাই প্রোফাউন্ড আমার কাছে হয়ে উঠছে না। কিন্তু আমি যখন নিজেকে বলি যে কি করে আমি ওই সাইলেন্সের দিকে এগোবো, তো এখানেও আর একটা উত্তর ওই স্যার যে লেখাটা পাঠিয়েছিলেন তাতে ছিল যে টোটাল অ্যাটেনশন। আমরা আমাদের জীবনে অনেকগুলো ডিসকভারি করেছি, যেমন কি করে জেলাস হতে হয় আমরা জানি, কি করে কম্পেয়ার করতে হয় জানি, এইগুলো হচ্ছে নোন আমাদের কাছে। আমরা সেক্স জানি, সেক্সের যে প্রোফাউন্ডনেস সেটা আমরা জানি। আমরা জানি যে জেলাসি বা অ্যাঙ্গারের যে প্রোফাউন্ডনেস, আমরা রেগে যাই, আমরা প্রত্যেকেই রেগে যাই। আমরা তো এর থেকে কিছু লাভ হয়, আমাদের একটা ভেতরে একটা দারুণ লাগে যে রেগে গেলাম আজকে আমি কম্পেয়ার করলাম, আমি স্পেশাল বক্তব্য রাখলাম। কারণ এটা আমাদের কেন মনে হচ্ছে না, আমরা কম্পেয়ার করছি একে অপরের সাথে। এর প্রোফাউন্ডনেসটা আমি জানি, কিন্তু টোটাল অ্যাটেনশন যে কে বলছেন টোটাল অ্যাটেনশন। ক্যান উই ডিসকভার, আমি নিজেকে কোশ্চেনটা পুট করি যে এই অ্যাটেনশন, টোটাল অ্যাটেনশন বলতে উনি কি বোঝাতে চেয়েছেন? উইদাউট এনি ইমেজ, উইদাউট এনি কনক্লুশন, উইদাউট এনি কাইন্ড অফ, শুধু লিসনিং, শুধু লিসন, শুধু ওয়াচ, এগুলো বলতে কি বুঝিয়েছেন? এটা একটা এনকোয়ারি ফর্মে অ্যাজ এ হাইপোথিসিস, অ্যাজ এ হাইপোথিসিস যদি আমি বলে দিই আমি জানি এগুলো, আমি যদি ঘোষণা করে দিই, ইফ আই অ্যানাউন্স দ্যাট আই নো what is total attention, then I cannot search it. But if I really keep it as a hypothesis, then I can, maybe I can discover what Krishnamurti is saying, total attention, happiness and bliss. And then I can differentiate myself, what is the difference between thought and the happiness and bliss. Thank you.
Thank you, Pavitra. So Hugo, just to say, because Pavitra was very comfortable in Bengali, so he was talking about the text that we had circulated about the Bombay talk. So he was talking about the issues like listening, attention, and particularly these two issues Pavitra was talking about. Why is it that we are not able to listen? So that was the issue.
I have the feeling that he summarized everything in the last 10 seconds in English, so that was beautiful.
Actually, there's this thing with translating, like there's a different color and theme in his whenever he talks in Bengali. So when you translate it in English, it loses its essence.
Essence. True.
Yeah. I understand. I wanted to say that this listening is really one of the main issues, because I think this act of listening, something goes on inside of you. It changes you. And for me, when I work with the kids, sometimes it's not like a very complicated thing. They might not be talking, but just the fact of listening to the children, it makes it to something changes. And I want to recall something that Mark Lee said. It's not I don't want to compare or anything, but he said that many people felt that Krishnamurti, when he was in front of them without saying anything, the 10% of his being will change the 90% of the people that they were attending. So I have the feeling that this transformation is also not in this verbal state. And when this act of listening takes place, there is something that goes and stays with you all the time. There is something going on. Thank you.
I mentioned just about our center friend, about Amala Chakravarti was 94, used to come to our center. But another example that I found it very interesting, I don't know whether it is relevant. Some of you may have heard of the Saint Anandamayi, particularly in Bengal, you have heard of Anandamayi. She was a really wonderful, very saintly person. And you could make out, actually, there was something that was there. So, because I had seen her sometimes, but I used to often wonder, what is that quality, that comes about with so much of peace, compassion, love, just very much on the face, but I could not actually pin it down. In fact, then I heard once when we met at the ashram or something. So she had apparently told the people surrounding her that, now I don't even feel like eating, actually. So whenever you think it's necessary, you sort of make sure that whatever you have to give me, you give me. So it was still a very big question mark for me, because I was all, sort of always thinking in terms of traditional things. But I really found some understanding of it, when I could get to understand a little bit of the essence of what Krishnaji is saying, is that when your entity, I'm not using the word self, because the self is, not in the sense that, Arijita would have used it, with Vedas and all that. but in the sense that we are using it, when there is no issue of self-centeredness in that entity, there is no other, it is not under anybody's control except for that which is, you can call it love, you can call it compassion, you can call it, it seems very scientific also, actually, because there is nothing else that is governing its motivation. There is no other motivation for it. All the motivations which have, either are there either because of all the hurts we carry, all the anxieties we carry, all the desires we carry. That's the self, basically, in the sense that, what perhaps Arijita would call ego. But when that is zero, totally zero, all those elements are zero, and to an extent where the brain and the body is not really able to respond to anything else other than, I'm using the word the other just for want of a better name, or the sacred or whatever. But I could actually understand this only because, like, being sort of a person who's gone through a formal education, etc., I could understand it because Krishnaji put it so simply. It's as simple as that. You cannot carry both. You cannot be responding to the other as long as it's full. This entire entity is full, So that I could never understand until actually I could understand, when it's at that point, many years later, that I understood, oh, this is what happens, to an entity which is totally free, totally empty. When you say empty, meaning there's no self-centeredness at all, actually, basically. So I used to often worry because when I used to go there, I used to be actually in tears in front of Anandamayi Maha. Actually, I used to wonder, at that young age, how can a person be in tears? Why should I be crying? So it was not a crying that was instigated by fear or anything, But then this question was answered so many years later because of a more scientific understanding that Krishnaji brought to the whole thing. So I know that, for us, it's very difficult to imagine that, that it's possible. But it did help a lot. I think that is what that lady friend was mentioning, Amala Chakravarti, when she said that her whole understanding of the Gita and all unfolded because of this perspective, this completely scientific perspective. Yet scientific and yet very simple, not complex. So that's what I wanted to add to that. Today, Gautam, totally silent. Karthik Babu, totally silent. Anujit is totally silent. Everybody else, I think, is. Gautam, ki holo aajke ekdam? You are thinking about your next movie.
No. Well, I was trying to listening and again confronting with other things. You see, what Chaitanya was saying, and Pavitra and you, everybody, without prejudice, without any confronting, Chaitanya what mentioned categorically and very profoundly, why we need to, compare, why we need to confront, but at the same time we always do that. Like here, I was thinking that here we are sort of this kind of same wavelength. Let's imagine if there is a person who is a fundamentalist or so-called believer in Hinduism or any ritualistic religion. So can I or can anybody here able to listen calmly without confronting? So that's the very, disturbing also. How can I listen without any prejudice, without anything, without any, just to, for the sake of listening, just to absorb wholeheartedly? That's a big jigsaw puzzle.
Deepika, yeah, Deepika, how are things in Shantiniketan? Deepika, can't hear Deepika.
Sorry.
How are things in Shantiniketan?
Things they're okay. The campus, of course, is a mess. with the vice chancellor trying to control everything and destroying the whole place. Because Tagore, like Krishnamurti, was a very open-minded person who wanted students and everyone around to be very free. But the present vice chancellor is trying to lock us into everything. As ex-students of the campus, we are not allowed to participate in anything.
Very sad, very sad.
We are not allowed to. Wait, let me put my headphones on.
Yeah.
We are not allowed to enter the campus, which is something we are not used to. I've been living near the campus for 28 years after I left the campus, and I would always visit the campus. So it's very frustrating not to be able to enter the campus, not to be able to attend all the functions and the thing. So, I mean, in many ways, I find a lot of similarities between Tagore and Krishnamurti. That if you read a lot of Tagore, you'll see that he actually has tried to make us free of our inhibitions. Like the core theme for today is fear, thought, and self. So when we think of self, we can define it in two ways. We can define it as the ego self or the inner self. In the inner self, we are actually freeing ourselves and becoming one with humanity. Thought, because I worked for 4 years in Pathshala, and so I had a lot of introduction to K and experience of actually using it in my day-to-day life as a KFI teacher. So, but I had a lot of questions. And moving away now, I've been away also from KFI for about 4 years, but I didn't let go of K and I didn't let go of my desire of teaching. So I've had a lot of free time because I'm not exactly engaged in a proper job. So I've had a lot of free think about what K said, what K meant, and reflect on life. It has made me question everything. From my existence to the meaning of God to the way I teach, everything. So normally when we are in a regular job, 9-to-5 job, our mind just works on a very superficial level. So we just don't go into the depth of things. But these 4 years where my life has been put on pause, I've had the time to actually reflect because I have no commitments, major commitments. So this is something we don't do. If somebody says something to me, I automatically respond to that person from my preconceived ideas of what I think or what somebody else has taught me to think. But I don't try to see, okay, maybe that person is also saying something which has a meaning. Am I able to interact with the person who thinks diametrically opposite to me? That is something very challenging, which I think being a part of Krishnamurti school and then leaving it and continuing to follow K, I've had a chance to reflect on these things. And the other thing is fear. When we look at fear, we are afraid because of our inhibitions, because we have been conditioned to think in such a way. So, I mean, Krishnamurti and Rabindranath have freed us. So, I mean, that's all I have to say for today.
Very interesting, Deepika, because you mentioned about thought. I just want to share that, before I before I actually went into some of these things with Krishnaji's teachings, actually. I think all of us have always been taught to glorify thought, actually. Vichardhara, this and that. But this is the first time when somebody said to me, which I found difficult at first, but it seemed to sort of become clearer and clearer. When there is one element of thought which is merely, whatever one is storing inside, thought is actually getting fed out of that. So I'm just talking not from a knowledge level, day-to-day level of things like my office where I am working, not that sort of thing. But generally, everything is coming from that memory machine, including all the things that we believe we belong to this religion or this or that. And the fact that, like the issue is, whether one can actually ever think, without that element, which is only a reaction to memory. That I found extremely interesting. Yet I had never come across that before. And still it's a big challenge, I think, the challenge for all of us, because I think it's what we are. I think the point, we mentioned about the theme. Again, it's worth questioning. Do we question or we agree or don't agree, whatever it is, whether the self or the ego is not the creation of thought, whether it is in fact nothing more than memory and thought. That's something that, I found it extremely difficult. And I still do, but at times. But something that I found so interesting, because we had put up a poster, as I mentioned sometime, that in the book fair we had put up a poster where Krishnaji said, we are not talking about self-improvement. We are talking about cessation of the self. So the question therefore is, that's the reason I put that theme as self, thought, fear, interchangeable, because fear cannot exist except by thought. It is fed by thought, I suppose. So I just wanted to put that across and, just to share whether anybody else has a different view on this. I see them all as one. That's why I put that as the theme. Self meaning ego, not in the other way. Yeah.
The fact Krishnaji denounced the improvement of self, because the improvement of self in nature is very superficial, I believe. Because it's totally based on involving of a lot of values and thoughts, like you said, glorifying thoughts. So I think that's the reason he totally denounced the term.
I think that, like the issue of fear, I think, which, I think Anshu wanted to raise that issue of fear, something that we all face. And sometimes we are so much in the grip of fear that we don't realize that it's all, so the whole connect between thought, fear, self, that somehow it gets lost. Because we are almost paralyzed by fear most of the time, almost paralyzed by fear. We can't even respond. More often than not, it becomes a sort of a reaction. Karthik, আজকে একদম quiet. Karthik Babu is very quiet today. Yeah. Karthik, carry on if you want to say something. Yes.
One thing that is in conflict with myself. Two speakers, we are humanity. That identifying with humanity, that is in conflict with my understanding. Because I think identifying us with humanity is a matter of mind. Another thing I want to say that most of us are in a same state of consciousness. Mostly we live in our mind level, mostly. And that level is carried from our personal history. And until we are aware of that personal history, and we can, with that awareness, we can have the real feeling of emptiness and offload that personal history. We cannot empty our vessel and be in touch with oneness of the existence. And that is the real challenge. And discussion have nothing to do anything with all these things. That experience is to come by full awareness, and that personal history must be understood, and the bondages and the tightening of those bondages must be loosened, so that we can move to that higher dimension of living and live a peaceful and joyful life. That's all I wanted to say.
More or less. Anybody else wants to add anything?
Sanjay ji wants to add anything?
Yes, Sanjay, want to say something, Sanjay?
Yeah, regarding this topic, I was wondering, both these three terms, self, out, and fear, are interrelated. Because I want myself to be secured. I don't want to get disturbed. I don't want to lose anything, my identity, my possessions, my knowledge. Some way, the fear is there because self is working. Fear is there. And how the fear comes from my thought of losing, thought to want to continue, thought to live more, numbers, 100 years, 200 years. So I want to be good health, everything. I want to more knowledge. I want to liberate myself. I want a peaceful life. I don't want to get disturbed. I don't want any pain. All these thoughts create fear. And this is me, which want. Self-center is me. So all these things are interrelated. If I absent myself, in some way, if I seize myself, all these things, if I see the fact, yes, pain is there. Yes, the weather is bad. Yes, I am not able to understand something. Yes, I am able to understand this thing. If I accept all these things freely, without any accumulation, what we always think, we always compare our knowledge with other things, or our knowledge, our past, all these things, whatever is stored in our mind, whether it is sometimes it's confirmed to our idea, our conclusion, or sometimes it is not confirming. So there are kind of fear of losing something, or to continue something with our knowledge. All these things are mixed up when the self is in action, center. It is, whenever I'm getting challenged, I just be aware of all these things, why these things are happening with me, where I am stand now. So it sometimes helps, because when I'm aware of this situation where I'm in, not in sometime comfortable zone, when I'm not, something is bothering me, just looking all these things, then it's give me some kind of healing. This is my idea. I don't want to come out from anything. I am thinking everything is happening very in nice way. But using word nice is also meaningless. It's all okay. Because peaceful, happiness, all these are words. But it is irrelevant to different people in different contexts. Some people is hurting someone, he is peaceful, he is feeling happiness. So these are meaningless sometimes if self is in-centered.
I want to share, Sanjay, what I saw, Chaitanya ji had put, in another group I saw, Chaitanya ji had put something that Krishna ji had said apparently, and I think most of you would have seen it actually. I never mind what happens, and the issue that was being discussed in that group, I never mind what happens. Now, something which I suppose it seems clear to me, but maybe it's only conjecture also in a way. That unless the things that we talk about, we talk about Satchidanand, we talk about the self, the deeper self, or we talk about the sacred or the other, if the connect with that is not actual, this thing cannot come, that I never mind what happens. This is my feeling actually. Because in a sense, many of us are playing a double game, I think, partly, because we want to keep this boat secure also, or we want that also. And that is impossible. If you remember that lovely story, I think it's in the parable of Ramakrishna, or wherever there was that story where the two salt dolls, who came by the ocean, and one salt doll was asked. They both asked the ocean that, can you tell what you are? What are you? They asked the question to the ocean, and the ocean said, you jump in and you find out. You jump in and you find out. So one salt doll actually jumped in. Salt doll said, of course I will jump in and find out. Without worrying, therefore I never mind what happens, that salt doll jumped in actually. And the story goes that, the salt doll, as it was dissolving, it discovered that I am the ocean. This is the example that we were discussing, with regard to that another Mahima which I mentioned, So that, and the other salt doll said, no, I do want to find out. But now I have many things to do, actually. So I will jump into the ocean, but I will jump into the ocean after I finish all my work. Of course, and before jumping into the ocean, that salt doll was crashed, and, basically, there was nothing left of that. So now the issue I found very, very interesting is, how we are actually living a game of deception. Whether it is Krishna, or whether it's Krishnaji, or whether it's Buddha, or the Vedas, or the Vedanta, everybody is saying you are the problem, actually, basically. You are the problem, meaning we want to hold on only to this. We'll say, yes, agree. We agree with everything, but actually we don't agree with it. We hold on to everything. So we really can never say, I never mind what happens. It's impossible. Only somebody maybe like Krishnaji can say that. Chaitanya, do you remember that you had put it on the other group? So I found it very interesting. I never mind what happens. Chaitanya is muted.
How much time do we have?
Just 5 minutes. Because we are hearing.
I just wanted to tell you, give a context to it. Actually, in a public meeting, K asked if people wanted to know his secret. And they were all ears, because they thought that the master was going to reveal a great secret which would transform their lives. They were just listening, and he said, you see, I don't mind what happens. So this can also come from a person who is completely insensitive, very callous, because I don't care what happens. But not in that sense. Perhaps there is a term used in Buddhism called upekha, which is a Pali version of upeksha, which is indifference. I mean, there's a very difficult question that Krishnamurti has asked somewhere, that if your son dies and you have done everything for him, you have put him to best hospital, done whatever you could do for him, and your son dies, your only son dies, why do you suffer? Now, these are impossible questions, because most of the questions that Krishnaji asked, they were not questions that could be answered easily, verbally. Now, he says, okay, your son has died, you have done everything. Why are you suffering because of it? Maybe pointing to the fact that if you are not selfish, if you're not self-centered, you don't suffer. Maybe that could be one interpretation. Another thing that I wanted to point out, that the moment the mind finds that it is in fear, almost simultaneously it creates an imagined state of fearlessness and begins to make effort to reach that state. This happens almost at a very deeper level, not at a conscious level. The moment I am bored, I start looking for excitement without knowing that I am bored and I am searching for excitement. Now, to stay with what one is passing through, what one is undergoing, experiencing, is another serious challenge that Krishnaji is throwing at us. So in a talk in Mumbai, I think a small group discussion, he says, when you are in a mess, be in a mess. Just see it, do not move away from it. I often used to wonder what he means by moving away. So we had a French friend in Rajghat, Jara, and he used to say that actually he doesn't mean just the psychological movement. He says that even you just sit in that moment very quiet. Don't move a limb. Don't just move. Just sit still and watch your psychological movement. That is the meaning of staying with it. That is the meaning of the statement, when you are in a mess, be in a mess. Don't look for a state where there is no mess. And these, I think, are very serious challenges. And another thing I wanted to say, Kamalji and my friends here, is when we listen to the words, we react with words. When we listen to thoughts, we react with thoughts. When we listen to somebody's memories, we react with our memories. I think Krishnaji's invitation is to not just listen to what he's saying verbally, but to get in touch with the space from where those words are coming. And then one can listen. You see, the paradox here is I can listen to Krishnaji only by not listening to his words. Because there is a space from where the words are coming. Somebody said Krishnaji was a medium or something like that in this group. I don't know about that because many of those things are very obscure, very mystical, and I mean inaccessible for my mind, unapproachable. But perhaps he's saying, just don't listen to the words, because if I listen to the words, conditioning will come, comparison will come, agreements and disagreements will come, reactions will arise. But in trying to listen to the space from where even he is speaking. So he says that when I use words, the words are coming from silence. They are not coming from reactions. They are not coming from memory. They are sounds of silence. My words are sound of silence. And he often says that. Like it's beating a drum. The drum has nothing inside. It's a hollow drum. It creates the sound when it is in right tension. So or like throwing a pebble in a small pond and it creates ripples. He says it's only when you throw a pebble. If you don't throw a pebble, the pond is still. Again, you throw a bigger pebble, there will be more ripples. But ripples are because of the pebble. Otherwise, it goes back to its tranquil state. Again, this is speculation. What I'm trying to say is that these are things one could experiment with, not only when Krishnaji is here, not only when we are looking at the beauty of the mountain in Kanchenjunga, not only when we are looking at the beautiful sunset, because many people in the K circle, they think that they become quiet only when they look at the mountain. So they keep going to the mountains. They keep going to the sunset points and they think that, oh, Krishnaji has mentioned sunset point, so something miraculous may happen there. But I'm saying that, can it happen when I listen to my friends here? I listen to Yash or Noor or Kamalji, Gautam, anybody, Arijit here. I just, can it happen? Otherwise, you will make me dependent on the sunset and the mountains. I may never reach there because I don't have the money to go to the mountain every week. So you see, listening not when you are in the mountains or when you are listening to Krishnamurti, but listening to our day-to-day conversation with people with whom we are always in disagreement, especially those people. There is the real challenge. In the mountains, everybody can be quiet. Yeah, like Alan Watts says, if you can't meditate in a boiler's room, you can't meditate. So meditate in sitting in the Kolkata bus or in a Mumbai local train. Otherwise, everybody can meditate in the privacy of his bedroom or drawing room. Everyone is a saint inside there. So, okay, that's all. So it was very nice. I could join you after so many days and I was missing you all. But again, for the last 2 weeks, my laptop is giving me some trouble. So sorry, you could not see me.
Chaitanya, before we end, I realized that, Noor has not said a word after he started.
Who?
Yeah.
Noor has not said a word, actually. You noticed the new change in Noor. Chaitanya, have you seen Noor earlier? Yeah.
No, this is the first time.
Oh, so that's why you won't have a problem, because Noor had a very long beard. Very long
Noor,
beard.
yes. So I met Noor. We were in Chilkat together. We had a retreat.
That's Noor there on the screen.
So, yeah, thank you very much for
he's a
letting me in for.
Yes, Noor, bolo.
Yeah, thank you. I really loved to listen to you all, and especially Chaitanya ji. It was a wonderful session. And in spite of my mess being in here with INSEE, you can see the Godam here. And I'm into all these things, but I really love to, be with you for a time. But yes, you can see the change in me. And I have lost my identity for 23 years long identity. I was in my beard. My wife married me looking at my beard. He said, you are a beard man, a loyal Muslim. I will marry you. And I have lost that identity. But again, it is not a fun. It is a very risky thing. But I'm going through it. And I can go through it and learn from it, what happens. And what I would like to say is that, yes, one should not run away from its mess. And in this mess, remaining in it and whatever is going through, the hurts, the pain, why one runs away from the pain? Yeah, that is a really very good thing, which I am trying to understand. Running away will not help. We have to stay in the mess, whatever mess we have created. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that we have to keep on creating more messes. And we are also not we can't also not end the mess deliberately, because if we wish that we should reduce our all these business and responsibilities, that is also not. It will happen naturally. I think if mind will see it clearly, if mind will see the cobra, then it will do its own by its own. There will be no efforts needed, maybe. Okay, thank you for listening to me. Thank you.
Kamalji, do you really think that staying with mess means actually even physically becoming very quiet and listening to what's going on? Because that was something, a very strange comment that he made. He said, just sit quietly and then watch what's going on. That is the meaning of staying with it. I found it very interesting, but I have not really understood. And I know I was really curious to know how do you respond to his suggestion that when he says stay, it means even physically you just very quiet. Don't move at all.
Yeah, I will just try to comment on this by a saying by JK. He said that throughout the world there is a revolt. Throughout the world there is revolt, but that revolt is not through understanding of the whole structure of the society, which is yourself. But that revolt is not through the understanding of the whole structure of the society, which is yourself. Means he's saying that yourself is a whole, and that revolt is fragmentary. He says that the revolt is fragmentary, but that revolt is not through understanding of the whole structure of the society, which is yourself. This has also got a lot of meaning with the saying which was circulated by Kamalda. There is such chaos, such misery and confusion in the world, and however small our gathering may be, if we can go into the problem very intently, then perhaps we shall come to a point when we ourselves will be the missionaries, not merely the listeners, when we ourselves will begin to talk of these things out of our own depth of understanding. Our depth of understanding combining with this saying, understanding of the whole structure of the society, which is yourself. The revolt is fragmentary, which is clearly means that all this chaos, misery, confusion is fragmentary. Whereas our understanding of the whole structure of the society, which is yourself, means this is egolessness. Yourself, I interpret it. Maybe others may not interpret it, but here it is very clear that whole and yourself. This is about egolessness completely, going beyond the mind, beyond words and thoughts, and quietness. This is probably the quietness which we go every day in the night. When we go to sleep, we shut down our mind. Of course, we don't. Consciousness is not available at that time, but that is the probably the quietness we have to bring during our waking stage. I do not know how many of you will agree with me, but this is my interpretation. Thank you very much.
So now we are.
Pavitra want to say something.
হ্যাঁ, মানে আমি একটা পার্সোনাল এক্সপিরিয়েন্স শেয়ার করব। সেটা হচ্ছে যে মানে আমি একটা মানে বড় মোবাইল ছিল আমার আর কি, মানে যেটা এখন দেখছি ওই মোবাইলটা না মানে আমার মানে অনেকদিন ধরে ইউজ করছিলাম। মানে আই ওয়াজ সো অবসেসড উইথ দিস মোবাইল। একবার হোয়াটসঅ্যাপ, ফেসবুক, তারপরে ইনস্টাগ্রাম, নানান রকম অ্যাপসে ভরে গেছিল, ঠিক আছে। তো মানে আমি বুঝতে পারছিলাম যে এটা আমার একটা হ্যাবিটে পরিণত হচ্ছে আস্তে আস্তে। তো মানে আমি ভাবছি যে কিছু একটা করতে হবে। তো আমি বলছিলাম একটা নতুন মোবাইল কিনবো, ছোট তো কেনার হয়ে উঠছিল না। আলটিমেটলি দেখছিলাম ওটা খুবই ডিস্টার্ব করছে। তো আলটিমেটলি আমি একটা নতুন ছোট মোবাইল কিনেছি, এই যে ছোট মোবাইল যেটা সেই আগেকার নোকিয়ার যে পুরোনো লাভারটা, তো কিনেছি। তো মানে আমি মানে এইটা যখন কিনলাম এবং আমি যখন এইটা ছোটটা নিয়ে ঘুরছি, তখন আমি দেখছি যে এটা একটা উইথড্রল সিনড্রোম হচ্ছে। মানে আমার কাছে যে বড় মোবাইলটা নেই সেটার আমি ফিল করতে পারছি, এবং আমি মানে হঠাৎ করে অনাসাডেন আমি একটা খুব টোটাল ফ্রিডম ফিল করলাম যে আমার ওই আগের মোবাইলটার থেকে আমি যখন এই ছোট মোবাইলটা ফিরেছি, মানে আমি যে কি হ্যাপি আমি বোঝাতে পারবো না। তো আমার মনে হয় যে আমাদের কনসিয়াসনেসেও এরকম যদি একটা শিফট হয়, মানে এটা একটা শিফট, মানে আমার এই নতুন যে একটা গাদা ঘুরছে বড় মোবাইল থেকে একটা ছোট মোবাইলের শিফট, আমার মনে হয় কনসিয়াসনেস এরকম একটা শিফট হলে খুব ভালো হয় সবার ক্ষেত্রেই। মানে এটা আমি খুব মানে আমি ছোট মোবাইলটা যে কি হেল্পফুল আর মানে আমি বোঝাতে পারবো না। তো আমি সবাইকে বলবো ছোট মোবাইল ইউজ করো আর হ্যাপি থাকুন।
So before we conclude, because we are nearing, yes, Chirujay, you are saying something, Chirujay?
I would say that Pavitra wants to say that he's free of the conditioning, attachment with the old things.
Right. So before we conclude, because we are almost at 1 p.m., I just want to narrate a small humorous incident. Actually, Noor had come to our center, and in our center, as many of you know, like Pavitra and all who have come to the center, our Paritoshda, he serves only liquor tea. And now Noor was too polite to tell me that, like he's not really, he's from Gujarat, So we Gujaratis, we love lice, masala wala. But he was very polite, he didn't tell me. So like that, we spent 3 or 4 hours in the dialogue. And then as soon as we went on the roadside, I went to drop Noor. He was going back to his hotel. Then he said, Kamalji, first of all, I want to have some real tea. So I said, now there is no real tea because all the shops are closed. But next time, Noor, we will give you masala wala chai. Next time.
Maybe maybe Kamal, I wanted to buy some property. He wanted some real tea. When I was many years back, I was close to one of these CPM MP who was in Kolkata. So she took me to the chief minister's office. She said, let's go there. So we went there, and the CM was not there. It was Jyoti Bose was the CM, and they serve only black tea, and thick black tea without sugar, without lemon. That was something very interesting. Not even a dash of lemon, no sugar, nothing. Just drink black tea. Maybe then I found their secret. Yes, this is the secret.
So Noor was very polite. Chaitanya, Noor was very polite. He didn't tell me at all till he went to the roadside.
When he said real tea, maybe he wanted to say real state. Maybe you misheard it.
So anyway,
expand his business in Kolkata also.
Yeah. It's almost 1 o'clock, and I just want to thank everybody. We had a good, really good dialogue. I could really feel the pulse of it. Very interesting. And as with all dialogues, as Chaitanya said, I think many of these things I suspended in the air. But I always find that, something emerges maybe a day later, an hour later, because, all of it is actually being, gone through again in the recording of the mind. One reflects on many of these things. So I hope it was as good as I found it. I found it very nice. And I hope that we can plan another one, maybe in a month or so again. This is different from other dialogues, where we have one facilitator or one speaker. So here is, we really want to actually get everybody involved in the process, participate in the dialogue.
Personally, I think this is much better than having one speaker as an authority who says, "Oh, I know holier than thou." So I think this is more friendly. There is a lot of camaraderie in this. People can share their views and they are free. They don't have to feel intimidated in the presence of a so-called big wig. So I think this is a much better forum. I prefer this.
And Chaitanya, so many things are crisscrossing during the thing, and they are all crisscrossing: self, fear, so many things like speculation or this or that, but somehow or the other later on, I think when one reflects on it, something or the other, I have always found it very valuable to actually reflect on it later. So thank you very much. Arijita, thank you very much for joining us.
I'm just averse to the presence of so-called authorities. That's all.
Yes, that's right.
And I don't mix any words. Thank you so much, Kamalji, for inviting me.
Thank you, Chaitanya. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you. Next time, I'll make sure my video works.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gautamji. Thanks for it. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Yash.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Noor. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, sir. Bye-bye. Have a nice day.